want to talk about WWE 2K22. I've been playing it a lot recently, maybe a little bit too much, maybe a little bit unhealthy, but I think the game is one of the best wrestling games that have come out in a long time. And I think the biggest draw to this game, like easily, is if you're a fighting game fan, if you enjoy playing Tekken or just competitive fighting games in general, I think you're gonna have a great time with this game. You don't really have to be a wrestling fan, because while the previous games felt more like a simulation, this one actually felt like a video game. Which is kind of a stupid thing to say, that a video game feels like a video game. But the previous WWE games just don't really feel like video games, you know, they feel like simulations. And this one actually feels fun, it feels fast, it feels responsive, and it doesn't try way too hard to be realistic. That's the biggest pitfall of the previous WWE games, when they try so hard to be realistic that they actually sacrifice some of the fun factor that comes from pulling off these crazy moves that may not really be realistic, but it's just so much fun to do stuff like that in a video game. I mean, WWE itself isn't really realistic. I mean, it is a company that has a dead man walking, you know, so it isn't really a realistic thing anyway. Like, WWE isn't basketball. And I want to talk about like the fighting game mechanics, because there's now combos in this game and they're super fluid, they're very easy. This whole game is very easy to learn, and it's very accessible for new players. If this is your first time playing WWE, welcome, and it's a lot of fun and it's very easy to learn. And I think it's very easy to pick up and play with friends and family, and that's the best way to play this game, to play with your friends and family and just have a good time. And the game also has a mechanic that's kind of unique for wrestling games. I don't remember this being in any wrestling games, although I haven't played them all. It's the combo breaker mechanic, which was ripped straight from the Killer Instinct games. And what a combo breaker mechanic is if you press the same button as your opponent, you can break their combos. It sounds very simple, but it's super difficult to pull off. And it really requires a lot of guessing and a lot of speculation, which is not something I expected from a wrestling game. But it adds a very welcome layer of strategy to the gameplay. Just the gameplay this time around is just so fast, so impactful. I mean, all of the hits feel like they are very painful, and it also has to do with the presentation of the game, because the graphics and the sound design, the animation, all that stuff is a lot better this time around. When you do a side-by-side comparison of the same wrestler from 2K20 to 2K22, just look at their face, their facial features, and it's just very obvious that the graphics took a huge leap forward this time around, and it really helps in the gameplay as well. But I do have some problems. I think that they do rely on combo breaker a little bit too much. There are points in the game where if you don't pull off a combo breaker, you will be relentlessly attacked by your opponent. And I hope they bring back traditional reversals a little bit more, you know, when you can just reverse their moves with just one button. You can still do that in this game, but it's in very specific situations. You can't do it in every situation, and I do hope they kind of find a nice balance between combo breakers as well as traditional reversal, because for new players especially, it's very difficult to teach them to pull off combo breakers because of just how tough it is in nature. So I do want to see them balance these things out a little bit. Let's talk about the physics in the game, because it's also a massive improvement, and I really enjoy the physics as well. You can place tables, chairs, ladders anywhere you want, and I don't think I have seen such good physics since SmackDown vs. Raw 2011. And that's a long time ago, okay? That's like 10 years ago? What? I was still in school when the game came out, so that's just how long ago that was. And apart from reminding all of us about how old we are and how eventually we are all gonna die, I think that the physics in this game also allows for a lot of very amazing moments that just feel so unpredictable and just spontaneous, because you can place a table anywhere you want and you can pull off moves anywhere you want. So without you knowing, you might pull off a move that would unintentionally put your opponent through a table, and stuff like that is just so surprising and so hilarious. And I just enjoy the physics so much in this game. Is it wonky at times? Yeah, definitely it is. It's not a perfect physics, but even the wonky moments actually lead to some pretty humorous parts of the game that I still remember and still very much enjoy. And let's talk about the roster in this game. The roster is a little bit limited in my opinion. I think a lot of legends that aren't in the game, a lot of people I want to see in the game aren't in the game. And while I understand that a lot of wrestlers have left WWE and it just doesn't make sense for them to be in the game, I want to see like some actually really good replacements to those missing wrestlers, because the replacements that we have gotten so far, personally I just don't think they are quite as interesting. And you know, if you're a fan of people like Kurt Angle, Daniel Bryan, Big Show, they're not in the game, so you might want to keep that in mind. And also, I just really like Ricky Steamboat, and I may be a little bit old on this. I don't know if younger fans appreciate Ricky Steamboat the same way that some older fans might, but I want to play as Ricky Steamboat. Please, I want to play as my Kung Fu boy, Ricky Steamboat. And also I want to see like different variations. They used to do that a lot. They used to have like different versions of John Cena, and now we only have one version of a lot of these characters. So you only have one version of Triple H, and that's the biggest problem, because the only version of Triple H we have now is the Triple H now, the present day Triple H, who doesn't have hair. And I just can't play as Triple H with no hair. I want to play as Triple H with that long, beautiful hair, and I want to see that hair return. Please, just let us have different versions of Triple H, one with hair, one without hair, one in the 90s, one before he was called Triple H, when he was called Hunter Hearst Helmsley or something like that. Just give us different versions of the same character. And also, the thing about the roster is, even though it is missing a lot of very important characters, a lot of very important wrestlers to me personally, it has a very good character creation system. It's kind of like community creation system, where the community can create characters and then they can upload it to the internet, and you can download characters from the internet. So if there's a wrestler that you really enjoy, you really like this wrestler, but he isn't in the game or she isn't in the game, you can just download it from the community creations tab. And the community has created some really remarkable wrestlers. They really do look official, and it really goes to show just how good the character customization system in the game is. And it's just a lot of fun just playing as characters that you know will not be in WWE anytime soon. You know, you can play as Batman, Mario, Sonic, SpongeBob, and you can have all of them fight each other. It's just so bizarre and so funny at the same time. It's one of my favorite things about a game, just downloading all these random wrestlers and having them fight against each other. It's just so funny. And let's talk about some of the game modes. There's a My Universe mode, which is my favorite mode. It's kind of like a sandbox. You're very free to do whatever you want. You can control the storylines. You can decide who is going to be rivals and who is going to be allies, and you know, all that stuff. Betrayals, tag teams. If you're a fan of WWE, you're gonna love the My Universe mode. I do hope there's a little bit more cutscenes, you know, maybe more backstage stuff, and you know, stuff like that would really make the betrayals or the rivalries seem a little bit more realistic, because it's something that WWE likes to do. They like to show rivalries and stuff like that in the backstage area rather than in the ring. And the My Rise mode is kind of a replacement for the career mode, and this time it has more emphasis on a story, and you can make decisions in the game that change the outcome of the story, which is impressive for a WWE game. I really enjoyed that as well. I think that a lot of the decisions that you make actually feel meaningful, which is not what I was expecting from a WWE game. And then there's My Showcase mode. My Showcase mode this time is about the career history of Rey Mysterio. And the thing with Rey Mysterio, right, is it makes a lot more sense to have him be the star of Showcase mode, because the thing with Showcase mode is once you play these matches you can unlock different costumes for the character. And it's funny how in like WWE 2K19 the star was Daniel Bryan, and you unlock 5 different costumes for Daniel Bryan, but they all look the same. They all just look like Daniel Bryan. But the thing with Rey Mysterio is he has a lot of different costumes, very colorful, very fancy costumes, and it's just very interesting to unlock all these different costumes from different eras of his career. And also I enjoy how they would switch between the gameplay with the interviews with Rey Mysterio himself and real life match footage, and the way the game kind of transitions between the gameplay and the cutscenes and the interviews make it seem like an interactive documentary of sorts, which is really cool. And then My GM mode, which makes a return since the SVR days, and I think My GM mode is super limited. They really should have combined certain parts of My GM mode with certain parts of My Universe mode to create something a little bit more substantial. But as of right now, My GM mode is severely lacking in variety. It really is a shadow of its former self, and it really isn't as good as the older games were, so you might want to keep that in mind. The My GM mode is functional, it works perfectly fine, but it doesn't have the variety that you might expect. And I think that's pretty much it. The biggest thing that I love about this game is just the fighting is so fast, so fluid, and I really enjoy like the physics and the new presentation, some of the details that go into the presentation as well. You know, one of the details is like if you play the match in an arena set in the 90s or in the 80s, it will actually have a retro visual filter to make it seem like you're watching it on an old TV, which is really cool. And I really like how the camera this time is a lot closer to the wrestlers. Kind of reminds me of the older wrestling games like Here Comes the Pain, where the camera is closer to the wrestler and it makes you feel like you're with the wrestlers in the ring rather than in the audience seat. Now what I want to see in the future, I want to see the addition of maybe new modes, new modes. I want to see more wacky, silly stuff come in. I want to see like maybe inferno matches, stuff like that. Inferno matches are when you push your opponent into the fire, that's when you win. Stuff like that, stuff that WWE doesn't do anymore, but it would still be nice to see them in video game form. And also I like to see more object interaction, more interaction with the environment in general. Like sometimes I would push my opponent into the wall and it seems like the game doesn't register the wall. There's no hit detection, there's no collision at all. The opponent just stumbles onto the ground awkwardly. Like they don't know there's a wall there, even though the wall is so big and so obvious. And the game also has a lot of hit detection problems where sometimes I would push my opponent into a barrier and the same thing happens. The game doesn't register that there's a barrier there. And sometimes you can pick up objects in this game, but there's not much use to it. Like you can pick up a chair, you can hit somebody in a steel chair, because of course it's a WWE game. It's not a WWE game if you can't hit somebody in the head with a steel chair. But you can't do other stuff. Like you can't put the steel chair under somebody's head and then step on their head, stuff like that, violent stuff that is so much fun to do in those old games. There's only one use for all of the different objects, and that's kind of disappointing as well. And other smaller stuff like having mixed gender fights where you can have a female wrestler fight a male wrestler, it's not such a big deal. Why is it so hard to implement stuff like this? I want to see all this stuff return in future games, but I think that WWE 2K22 laid a great foundation for future WWE games, and it's just the best wrestling game I've played in years.